The Amazing Women Speak podcast, inspiring and motivating every Black woman to own, honor, and execute her amazing, individually and collectively, as it was established at birth.
Good evening, and happy Sunday to you all. I'm Crystal L. Gunn, and welcome to another episode of Amazing Women Speak. Thank you for joining us. And so while you're settling in for the show, please do me a favor, hit the share button. Share Amazing Women Speak so your friends and followers can get in on this conversation. And Amazing Women Speak is sponsored by the Amazing Woman Network, which was created to unite and empower Black women globally, focusing on the core pillars of owning our personal power, mind, body, and spirit, owning our financial power, and increasing our social involvement. You can visit us on the web at amazingwoman, WOMAN, network.com. So now let's get this started. And I got a question for you. So how many times have you put on a mask to fit in? So how many times have you sat quiet, second-guessed yourself, filtered what you were gonna say, acted differently, or dimmed your light, all in an effort to fit in? And we live in this world where society pushes us, especially Black women, to fit into this box so that we're acceptable, right? And every time you shrink for others, a piece of your amazing dies. Genuine people and opportunities don't show up, and you never align with your higher self. Let's talk about it. The authenticity advantage, being true to yourself, is your superpower. And it never warrants an apology. And it is your key to owning, honoring, and executing. You're amazing. Before we can start this thing off officially, I have to welcome my BFF. Hey, Michele.
Hey,
How are you?
good evening. Doing well. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. I don't know a conversation we need to have more than the one we're going to have tonight. It is the plight of every Black woman who has found herself in a room that somebody else said that she didn't belong in. Great conversation. And this truly will be the fastest hour of our day tonight. So much to unpack and explore and to uncover about what it means to find your authentic self and be true to the authenticity of you. But we can't do that without having amazing guests to be able to be a part of this amazing conversation. Jazzmin, please come in and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited about today. I am Jazzmin Pitts. I am a clinical mental health student and also the founder of Heal Black Women.
Welcome, Jazzmin. Looking forward to hearing your story, how you made this journey to appreciating and acknowledging the beauty of being authentic. Nicole.
Hello. Thank you, ladies, amazing women, for the opportunity to join you all on this amazing podcast on today. I am the founder of Exquisite Femininity Mentoring Program for girls and young women. I have 3 beautiful daughters, and I help them to navigate the traumas and the experiences that girls have experienced as well as young women, and help them to overcome those barriers so that they can live their true, authentic selves.
Welcome, Nicole. I too am looking forward to hearing more about you and about this organization that you've established, both of you, thinking about the importance of having whole Black women to walk this earth. So I'm really excited to hear and learn more about the work that you are doing in those spaces. To our guest, whatever platform you are joining us from, we welcome you to be a part of this conversation. You make it richer with your comments and your questions. So please, one more time, join us for this ride as we talk about being authentic and the gift that it is to discovering who you are. I tell our guests, Nicole and Jazzmin, every week that this is the fastest hour of our day. Today will be no exception, I am sure. Because before we can talk about discovering the authenticity, I'm going to kill that word all night, I know it. We have to talk about what happened on the other side of the wall before we got there, right? And so we like to launch deep. We don't have time for shallow waters. So I want to talk to you both about code switching. The way that we show up to fit in, to be accepted, to try to figure out where we belong. So many of us have been guilty. So many of us have to put on that mask. So I want to talk a little bit about what that code switching experience was like for you before we get to that moment that you recognize that that can no longer be the space that holds you, and that dimming your light through code switching did not serve you or your vision for your future self. Jazzmin.
Yes. So I used to work in behavioral health, working with kids with autism, and the job was actually a lot more, or a lot less of us than it was in my current position. I feel like for me, that's a little bit of a tough question because I feel like my code switching stemmed more from my anxieties about who I was and less of fitting into a certain environment. It was more so that anxiety that came that caused me to dim my light because of not knowing who I was or my worth in those spaces. So I always showed up as a great employee, always did all the things, made myself available, but there was a lot of anxiety in those roles and always just thinking mentally like, am I enough? Am I doing enough? But a lot of that stemmed from my own issues that started in childhood. So yeah.
Oh, so yeah, so you're beginning to already to tell us a little, give us a little peek inside of why you founded Heal Black Women.
Yes.
And I look forward to unpacking that some more.
Mm-hmm.
Nicole, talk to us about code switching.
So I'll start from my youth on up. So when I was younger, I started wearing glasses when I was 4 years old. And back in the 80s, the glasses were so huge and I had this little small face. Then not only that, I was skinny, had a big nose and big lips. And so I would always get teased for being skinny, having big lips, a big nose, and being four eyes because of having to wear glasses. And it caused a lot of insecurities and low self-esteem within myself because I could not see myself past what others were saying to me. And that carried on up into my adulthood. And the issue that I had was that others were able to see me for who I truly was, but I could not see myself. Mm. And I will say that I had an aunt who she would always tell me from the time I was a little girl until I was an adult, she would say, Nikki, you're beautiful. But of course, when you only have one person telling you that, and then you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you don't see what they see, then that's what you know. So I'll leave that there.
Crystal, knowing your journey personally, and I know our viewers would benefit from hearing, right? Like someone who spent a significant amount of her career in the banking industry where you were one of one, right? Both in race and in sex, oftentimes holding VP roles. Talk to us about code switching and the seat that you sat in, recognizing that this was the way that first you got into the room. And then we'll talk a little bit later about you busting out of that room.
Yeah, I mean, it code switching for Black folk and corporate America go hand in hand, right?
Absolutely.
Because again, you still have to be accepted to get the positions and the roles. You still have to be accepted. So you have to, say the right things. You can't step on too many toes from the beginning, right? You gotta play it safe for a while. So yeah, I definitely went through that. But you start to choke on those words.
Yeah.
And you're playing it safe. So
yeah. Right. And so we've also been conditioned. How many of us heard fake it till you can make it?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Right. And so before we discover who we truly are, before we discover ways to address the anxiety and the fears of who we are and build that confidence, we've been taught, we've been socialized, we've been conditioned. Oh, just fake it till you can make it. And before you know it, you're somebody that you don't recognize because you're trying to chase a thing, get access to a room. And not that we're not deserving of any and all of those things, mm-hmm. right? We've been sold a story that we have to show up in a certain way in order to, right? I remember very early in my career, wanting to be on a management track as a young Black woman with natural hair, and was told that I would not get an interview from a Black man who told me that. Like, right? You talk about internalized racial oppression. And so I permed my hair for a job I didn't get.
How about that?
Right? So that was the first light bulb moment, right? Like adjusting to fit a narrative for an individual or for a position will constantly have you chasing. Go ahead, Crystal.
And we can't even, like, we don't get to show up as something other than a Black woman. I don't care if you got, you know what I mean, permed hair, whatever it is. You don't get to show up as something else because your Blackness shows up before you do in the room.
Else, right? Yeah. So we had to be as close to white adjacent as we could, right? Like that was his message to me. Get as close, be white adjacent, straight hair, right? Like, but the white girl with the purple hair could come in and be interviewed all day long, right? She could be authentic to who she was. It was not acceptable in corporate as you were trying to climb up a ladder. So I want to talk a little bit. Oh, go ahead, Nikki.
So I'm sorry. I want to piggyback on what you're saying. I worked for a subsidiary of Ford Motor Company some years ago. And my boss, I worked in human resources, and I remember one day my boss and I, who was a Caucasian man, we could joke around, right? And I remember one day I went in, I put my hair in a ponytail, I put on some jeans, I put on a sweatshirt, and I showed up to work. I was on time, but I showed up, right? And I went to his office and I told him, I said, I'm really just not feeling it today, And he looked at me and he was like, oh, okay. He was like, okay, buddy, like we'll see what we can do. And in that moment, it was like a test, because why is it that, okay, we'll go ahead and send you home because your hair is in a ponytail. You don't look the part. And I was the receptionist, so I was the first point of contact. He's like, yeah. And then I jokingly said, okay, I'm just joking with you. Went on, put on my professional clothing, took my hair down and everything like that. But why was that?
Right.
Why was that unacceptable? And let's see what we can do to get you home. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to, let's see what we can do, but are you okay? Can you stay?
Correct. Right.
Yeah.
All of the stories, right? Like when we do that reflection, remembering all of the ways in which we were othered, all of the ways in which we were told we weren't enough, and that being authentic, being who we really are, the gift that we are, and the things that gift would bring. You would rather minimize that and require us to dim our light. And so we dimmed it.
Yeah.
To be grateful to just be in the room, to be grateful to just have a seat at the table, to be grateful, right? And so we learned to be okay with the crumbs off of the feast of others while we were doing the king's work of the organization, of the role, of whatever that is.
And that whole statement has just made me so angry over here. Go ahead. Like, I'm just like literally cringing that.
And it's the Black woman's story, right? Like it's unfortunate that it's not unique. It is the road. And some of us are still in it. Some of us are wearing the mask. And when you begin to discover that at 501, that you get to be who you are, right? Like, Jazzmin, when did you begin to discover that I get to be, right? Like you were waiting for 501, right? Like the anxiety became a little less, whatever that was looking like for you. When did you begin to realize that I'm holding two roles in one body?
Well, I'm always going to go back to the core, because we have to talk about the core in order to move forward. As you said, a lot of us, like, this is the Black woman's plight. This has been something that we have learned and adapted through slavery, is to lesser ourselves, even our children, so that they can't be sold off. A lot of times the mother would talk about the child in a way that is less than, in order to, keep him from being sold off. Like, okay, he said, oh, your boy's looking strong, he's looking healthy, but they would say, no, he's lazy, or he's this. It's something that has been conditioned in our community. So for me, learning that that this is something that has been a part of our core, but then also figuring out where my core began. A lot of that was passed on through the way that my mother viewed herself, which is passed on to how she raised us to view ourselves. And there was a fear there. So I was afraid to be myself. I was afraid to walk in spaces and feel less than, or, all the stuff that I have been through made me feel like I wasn't worthy of being in the spaces that I was in.
Right.
But when I started to go back and realize, like, okay, this is not something wrong with me. This is a pattern. And I can unsubscribe to the pattern. I don't have to be a part of this. I don't have to say, oh yeah, that's our generation, so I'm just gonna keep it cute. No, I get to be as bold and as loud and as taking up space as I can. So for me, it led to purpose. All the things that I had been through, all the things that I've learned in school. I'm very, very big on attachment theory, but not just so how it affects our relationships, but how it affects the way that we view ourselves. So learning that was the start of me coming out of my shell and realizing, hey, like, let me lean into the areas where I'm uncomfortable, and just starting to show up as myself.
So explain attachment theory.
Okay, so attachment theory, there are 4 different components to that. So there's secure attachment, which means you had a great relationship with your caregiver. All of it is about emotional safety. So if you felt safe with your parent, you were able to express yourself, that's secure attachment. You also have an anxious attachment, which is usually when you felt like you had to perform. So a lot of us who are people pleasers have an anxious attachment style because you feel like you have to perform for love all the time. I was disorganized attachment, which is that push and pull where it may have been unstable in the home. So you still seek the love, but you're not necessarily getting it. And the people that you seek it from tend to hurt you in the process of that or make you feel like it's not safe. And then I think that's all 4. Did I say 4 of them?
That was 3.
So it's anxious. Oh, avoidant. Avoidant is when it's in the word,
Right.
because it wasn't safe to do so. It wasn't safe you didn't feel that safety connection. So you tend to push people away and you're hyper independent where it's, I have it, I can do it on my own because you weren't given that type of love from your caregiver. So these things not only just show up, as I'm in school, looking at a lot of different people that spoke on these things, a lot of white men. We don't see a lot of us talking about this. Even when I was teaching, so I also work for a company called the Union, or a nonprofit called the Union, and I do their workforce department. And I created a program for girls, teen girls on attachment as well. And even trying to find videos, representation, people speaking on this on YouTube that look like us, there was none.
Right.
So these are things that I want to bring to the forefront, which is what, shameless plug, what we do at Heal Black Woman. Yeah, so it's all about healing the mother wound. I do believe that this is something that is the core of us. A lot of the patterns, the way that we operate in business, the way that we live our lives are, as you said, this mask of who we are, and these protective traits that we've built. And now we have to unlearn them.
And thank you for that. And I asked you to go into some depth about that because a lot of times we walk through life and Michele says it all the time, name the thing. And so now that people see that, somebody can say, oh, okay, I am operating like that. And now that you know that that's how you're operating and why, now you can put the steps together in order to start to heal. So thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
Super important. Important. So a narrative began to shift in a really bold way after the murder of George Floyd, right? We refused to be silent, right? Like there was a difference that had to be made in that moment. And on his death, we became a collective and decided there were going to be different ways in which we showed up, right? And race equity work was really, really growing and being more public. Even more public is how we hid it under diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Mm-hmm. So in diversity, we started talking about show up as your authentic self, show up as your authentic self. It almost became commercialized in what it meant to be authentic, right? And so when you hear the power of being authentic, the power advantage of authenticity, what rings for you, Nicole?
Being unapologetic about who you are, showing up as your true, authentic self. I tell people I can only be who I am. I can't be anyone else. I can't portray to be anyone else. I don't want to be like anybody else. I just want to be me. And being now, whether it's accepted or not is a totally different situation. But my thing is that as long as I'm confident and bold in who I am, then there is nothing that anyone can do that can shut me down, right?
Mhm.
So as long as I am caring, loving, I'm educated, I'm knowledgeable, I'm spiritual, I'm bold, I am assertive when I need to be, then that to me is what matters the most.
So, Jazzmin, from a healing Black woman perspective, right? So, Nikki, are you okay with me calling you Nikki? You called yourself that, and I grabbed it without permission.
Mhm.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
I'm all about names and honoring the gift that our mothers gave us when they named us. And
Yes.
so I didn't seek permission, so I apologize for
No,
that.
you're fine.
So just when you think about from the healing perspective, one of the things Nikki lifted up, right? Like I am going to just be me without apology. When you've been in a world where you had to code switch or you had to wear a mask, how do you even know who you are? Show up as your authentic self. How do you begin to heal that, acknowledge that, so that you can begin to show up in an authentic way?
Yep. So that is my core and my purpose. I have the unique advantage in psychology to have experienced this myself, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. A lot of theories that you hear and things that people come up with is just from a observing human behavior standpoint. Mine is very, very personal. So one of the things that I talk about is getting to that core of starting with figuring out what your attachment style is and why. From there, we have to learn how to emotionally regulate. A lot of us are coming and just giving all these different emotions that are in our triggers. So we're responding not from logic, we're responding from our landmines that people step on. From there, we have to learn how to build self-trust. A lot of us are self-sabotaging, are doing all these things because we don't trust ourselves. A lot of times, the things that people don't speak about is when you are betrayed by a caregiver or somebody in your life, it's not just you losing trust in a person, you start to lose trust in your decision making. So you start showing up as this person that doesn't even believe in the moves that they're making. So I feel like for authenticity's sake, really learning how to not silence yourself, but learning how to trust yourself so that you won't silence yourself. I feel like that is the core of it.
We're a big proponent of therapy. We're a big proponent in understanding that there are parts of you that need to be healed through some childhood trauma that we do not know exist, right? Like we show up and we act out or we walk a certain way based on a trauma that we have not yet unpacked, right? Like we strongly believe it. And in order to be authentic, if you have found yourself walking through a world where you have been code switching, wearing multiple hats, trying to fit in order to discover the things that you're lifting up requires therapy. It requires assistance outside of your girl group. It requires assistance of someone who can help you understand and unpack, identify, and then build strategies, as Crystal talked about, to take those next steps.
Yep.
How do you invite folks into that deeper work?
So one of the things about creating the Space Hill Black Woman, I wanted to make it accessible. Sometimes, therapy is looked at as, especially in the Black community, there's a lot of stigma around going to get help. So I wanted to create that initial community-based therapy. Western society makes us feel like everything has to be isolation, hyper independent. I have to do this on my own. And we're carrying so much when it's not meant to be carried alone. So one of the things we do talk about these different topics. We have worksheets and tool books. And I'm a very no fluff workshop person. I don't even like to use the word workshop because this is a step by step guide to help you open up. But we do have licensed therapists on our board that come to our events. We often, talk about completing the work in therapy, but we give people a safe space to start unpacking these things in a community, which I feel like is important, just to be able to lean on each other as Black women.
I love that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, Nikki, tell us about exquisite femininity.
So exquisite femininity is basically what Jazzmin does, but from the spiritual aspect. you know, when you're talking about getting to the core, I'm talking about getting to the root, you know, and unpacking all of those layers that have come upon us from the young age until our adult age, and just figuring out how to overcome them. I didn't have therapy when I was younger.
Right.
So everything that I learned, I had to go through firsthand myself. And then just the Lord giving me the mindset, the thought of, okay, this is why you act this way. This is what triggers you in this area. So that's how my healing came forth. So yeah.
Uh, so the bridge, the discovery of the gift, the advantage of being authentic. Krista, I want to circle back to you to talk about the travel of that bridge when you discovered you could no longer, right? Like you were denying the amazing that's in you, sitting in spaces that were not designed for people that look like us. And you said no more.
So I remember being that VP at the credit union with um, that that white older man as the president, and we had still wasn't balanced. It was a handful of black folks and the majority of white folks that worked at that credit union. But I had to give him lessons continuously about black folks. You know what I mean? And he wasn't like it wasn't like he was this blatant racist whatever, right? But it was still the just not knowing. And so I think that became the thing where it was like, oh, okay, well, since I got to tell you, let me just tell you. And that is where I found the voice to then start to speak for my people. You know what I mean? It was like, oh, okay, well, I got to come in here and I got to educate you on why a thing is the way that it is. Just because you don't understand, well, then now I just need to continue to be that voice. And I've continued to be that voice um, unapologetically to the point where I think I'm probably unemployable at this point, right? Like no one's gonna be like, ma'am. But it is that thing, and not doing the thing and not speaking up. Really, it does more harm, I think, than good. And you're gonna lay awake at night like, why didn't I say? Why didn't I do? Right? Because you were put in this position for you to do it and you didn't. So you wind up letting yourself down. And so part of that becomes that how that road just continues to go and build. And yeah, no turning back.
Nikki, do you remember the moment or the season you were in when you discovered that dimming your light was not serving you, your gifts, your talents? Do you remember that season in your life?
Very much so. It was very uncomfortable. Being told you have to dumb yourself down because if you speak as if you know too much or you know what they know, then you can be cast out. And it's like, okay, but why? If others are able to just express themselves and show up to work and have all the answers, or it seems like they have all the answers. And then you do have the answers and you give the correct information, but yet you're frowned upon. Like, okay, well, why do you know that? How do you know that? I remember one day in particular, there was this guy who, being a single mother, with 3 daughters, right? And I had a $50 bill. That's not uncommon for a person to have. But he looked at me as this single Black woman. How is it that you have $50?
Yeah.
Wow. You know, I mean, that was like an insult, you know, like, I told him, I said, well, I work where you work.
How about that?
You know, the profit share that you receive in January, I get the same thing, if not more, or whatever the case may be. You know what I'm saying? So just because, I don't categorize me because I'm a Black woman, I'm a single Black woman, and I'm a single Black woman with children. Don't put me in a box. Don't limit me because there's no limitations on me. And truth be told, I had one person tell me, he said, "Oh, Nicole, you'll still be here when I retire in the same position." And I was like, wow. I said, "Excuse me." I said, "No, I will not." I said, "This will not be the place where I retire from."
Wow.
And I did not.
Moral of the story.
First of all, the audacity.
Thank you, Dave. That part, right?
That part.
The audacity is at an all-time high. And so I was saying last week on our show, the most dangerous human being is a Black woman who finds her voice.
Listen.
Right? There was times we would have sat in silence when somebody questioned why we had $50, right? We would have sat in silence through all of the microaggressions that happen, sat in silence. And then you recognizing it's costing me something I can no longer afford to pay.
Yep.
Jazzmin, when was the bill due for you? Like not paying it?
The bill was due for me. I feel first of all, I work for an amazing organization and we are very, culturally, we blackity black. So it's a great space. It's a great space to be in. However, I feel like the bill hit the wall for me when I learned myself. Everything for me goes back to really learning who I am. I'm trying to shift it, but I'm like, I can't. I got to talk about it. So for me, even little things like I was very easily triggered by things. I always felt like people were coming for me. I was very anxious being in rooms, felt like I wasn't worthy to be there. Networking was scary. All the things just because I wasn't sure of myself. But I feel like once I realized that authenticity is a process, it's not something you don't have to show up completely every day. It kind of helped me to just be more centered. And then checking the story is something that I always talk about in our sessions. Is a lot of the self-talk that we put on ourselves come from a story. Like they're not really even what the person may have said to you. It could be something that, was triggering, that brought you back to something else in your life. So checking the story has helped for me, where it's like, okay, where's this thought coming from? Like, why am I feeling less than in this space? Where did that root take place? And then allowing myself space and time to process it. And some days, I still feel anxious, and that's okay. Like I still feel anxious. I feel, we deal with imposter syndrome, all those things. But I remember that this is a part of the human experience. Like we're all having a human experience. Each and every one of us are, accomplished Black women, but we still have our days. And that kind of takes the pressure out of feeling the need to be everything all the time. And I feel like once I realized that, it kind of made me show up authentically in every space that I'm in, because it's like, hey, if it's a good day, like you said, with your ponytail, that ponytail, you probably still looked amazing, sis. So the fact that that's you, that's a side of you. The hair down, that's a side of you. The days where you don't feel as fully there, that's a side of you. And just being able to show up as all of those. I don't feel like authenticity is, I'm about to butcher the word too, but I don't feel like that is something that just is consistently that looks the same way every day. So realizing that, I feel like that's when I started to just be myself and just be okay with that.
That's such an important point, right? Like nothing about this journey to being authentic is a light switch, right? Like it is a dimmer and there's going to be some ups and downs. There are some days where code switching is necessary for survival. There are some days where you recognize, right? Like I am, that imposter syndrome is really real. And I look up and I'm acting as someone that is not true to who I am, right? And so being able to build that confidence and being able to identify, like I'm having anxiety around a certain issue. And so being authentic in this moment might be as simple as me acknowledging where I am, right? And one of the things that got lifted up last week, talking about the importance of recognizing being good enough is good enough, right? And that's that first step to greatness. Recognizing who you are as a Black woman is a gift to this world. And identifying how authentic that gift is a journey that is difficult to make because society will continue to try to hold you inside of a box and tell you that you aren't worthy, that you aren't good enough. So being able to recognize, like, how do I build confidence in this moment? How does the work that both of you do in those spaces really highlight for the women that you get an opportunity to work with the importance of and understanding that it's a journey, right? Like we ourselves, being accomplished, amazing Black women, still have moments where we don't feel worthy, good enough. How in your work do you pay attention to building confidence or helping women build confidence, helping little girls see the importance of the journey that takes them to their greatest selves?
So I know I tell them, the girls and the women, it's okay to have your human moment because we are human and none of us are perfect. We're striving to be better. We're striving to be perfect. But in the meantime, you have to deal with where you are and you have to embrace it and own it and become comfortable in that space though first, because you have to acknowledge where you are, realize that that's the space that you're in before you can move on. Because if you try to move on before addressing the issue, you'll still be messed up. So then you'll be a crazy, mentally, disturbed, emotionally disturbed, a better, well, semi-better version of yourself, or still being the imposter, still having on that mask, still wearing blinders to who you really are. And if you cannot embrace where you are and then have that self-reflection, have therapy, whatever the case may be, talk to someone, wise counsel, then you will never become the woman that you are to become if you haven't addressed that first. I'm sorry, just yeah, and that's so important. And these young girls, they are definitely, and I won't even say just the young girls, but even just females, period. There is an identity crisis that is still going on that definitely has to be dealt with. We can address it, but it has to be dealt with. And with so many different things that come into our eye gates visually, whether it's on social media, whether it's out in public, restaurants, school, wherever you are, there's always something that someone is looking at to become, as opposed to being their true authentic self. And a lot of people are not happy with that. I just had a conference on March 1st. And, I'm like telling people, asking them, do you actually take out the time to look at yourself in the mirror? And some people, grown women, older women, seasoned women, still have a problem with doing that. Well, if you cannot see yourself as the true authenticity of you and the beauty of how God has made you and the amazingness, you know what I'm saying? And all of that you possess, all the gifts, all the talents, all the skills, your curves, your figure, your hair, your eyebrows, your eyelid, everything that represents you. If you cannot look at yourself in the mirror, then there's still the problem. So you can put on your makeup, you can do your hair, you can put on your perfume, you can put on your Louis Vuitton, you can do all of that. You know what I'm saying? But that still doesn't help your inner self.
Right.
And so that inner self has to be healed. And I'm thankful for those that I do come in contact with, because I go in deep with them. And I thank God for him being able to trust me, because these people, they trust me. You know what I'm saying? They're trusting God who's in me, and they tell it all. And my thing is, okay, because I'm all about transparency. I'm not perfect. I did not just arrive when I woke up one day like this.
Right.
You know? And so it's like there's going to be still some triggers until you fully overcome them. There's still going to be some rejection issues that you have, some abandonment issues that you may have. But Dr. Cindy Trim, some years ago, she said that rejection is just redirection. And if we can get that, like fully embrace that within ourselves, then we can truly overcome all of that negative stuff that we sabotage ourselves with, those self-defeating thoughts, and we can become our true authentic self.
And we have to realize that it is a process.
It is a process.
And as long as you are living in this life, you're going to continue to heal if you put in the work. That's what you're here for. It's to align with your higher self, but you got to put in the work. And I wanted to uplift up that it's a process, because we live in this microwave society where people want things right now, right now, right now. And it's like, yeah, you're not about to heal overnight. That's not how this works. It's just you gotta put in the work. And the work, let's be clear, the work is hard.
Yeah.
But on the other side, oh baby, like on the other side.
And so many of us don't feel worthy of the other side.
Right.
Because of the traumas, right? Because of the things we've been told, the things that we were taught and caught that society has said, right? Like, is the thing for the Black woman to measure herself by. And the social media world isn't making it any easier. So Jazzmin, you talked earlier about triggers and really understanding what is trigger, like what happened. What are some tools that you can give us that helps us begin to identify them? Because as long as those triggers keep coming up, we'll never fully be able to, right? Like be authentic. We will forever code switch. We will ever put on a mask. We will forever dim our lights because we can't identify. We don't know how to identify the thing that's causing me to act against my best self-interest.
Yes. Before I say anything, I just wanted to say kudos to you, Nicole. I was also somebody that didn't do therapy. I had to do the work on myself. It was painful. It was a lot. But there is a podcaster that I listen to, Jeremy Anderson, that says I have a PhD in pain. And that is something that I identify with. I've been there. I've been in the fight. So just kudos to you, because I know it's a very tough refining process, the ongoing process. But yes, some of the things, I created something called an emotional checklist. So my biggest thing is to help women realize when you are triggered, how it feels in the body. Start identifying, okay, what are you feeling in your body right now? I mentioned checking the story. Where is this trigger coming from? Is this person, one of the things I say to myself, like, is this person intentionally trying to hurt me? Or is this something that, is stemming from a different root? If this person isn't trying to hurt me, or if this situation wasn't, out to get me, then do I still feel the same? If I still feel the same, what am I trying to communicate? Because sometimes we do need to have a conversation. Sometimes, but a lot of times, our triggers are because we don't feel heard or seen. And it's that child in us that starts to ramp up, that's needing to be heard and seen. So if you're trying to communicate something like, hey, that might not, the way that you said that kind of touch me this way, or, can we just focus on, or can you maybe try communicating a little differently? Like trying to figure out how you can communicate your needs in a way that isn't explosive, because that doesn't help anybody. That doesn't help the situation. That doesn't help you. That doesn't help the person on the other end. You're not getting anything accomplished. So that's just something that has been helping me, just creating checklists for myself, because the reality of it is, I don't know if we're never not going to be triggered. Like, I don't know.
Right. Right.
The thing that is going to happen throughout life, but one of the things that we need, that is our responsibility, is to learn how to deal with them prior to reacting to them, so that we're not reacting in an explosive way, and just carrying ourselves better and being more responsible stewards over our emotions.
And it's really interesting because part of the challenge is the bar for explosive is so much lower for the Black woman, right? We can't have tone, we can't have too much energy, we can't have too much volume before we get labeled for the same tone and energy that someone that doesn't look like us can bring into the room and it be acceptable. So that bar is already so low for us. So really being able to understand what does trigger so that I can get the thing that I walked in the room to get. And it is unfortunate, but that's the hand that we've been dealt. And it is the hand that we need to learn how to play until we can change the narrative that's happening in that room. And go have white folks do their own work. Like, we're beyond the days of educating and helping white folks understand the plight of the Black person. Go do your work, and then we can come back and have a conversation. But until that happens, right? Like, we already have to double check ourselves, because if I speak too loud, my message isn't heard because I'm the angry Black woman, right? And so oftentimes we start measuring the cost of being authentic and being apologetic out of fear or out of rejection for how that person is going to be received. How am I going to fully be received? How do we get over the fear the first time you go in, literally, like, I'm going to be who I am unapologetically, and the rejection happens or the unacceptance happen? How do we get over that hill?
I feel like it starts. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I feel like it starts small. Before you jump into, the big leagues, when you speak up in a meeting or whatever it is, I feel like it starts with the small things. I always mention a moment that may seem very minuscule, but it was dynamic for me. And I also put it in my book, shameless plug, Healing the Hidden Child, from Guarded to Grounded. But I love that. Thank you. I have a friend, and she was in the car. We were just driving, and she's a Leo. So she's very much herself, very much in her own energy. She was we were singing all the old school songs. Well, she was. And she was loud and belting, didn't care about how she looked. But I'm usually very reserved. And I'm learning that some of that reservation is not my own to carry. Like, it's things that I've learned to protect myself.
Correct.
So in that moment, I leaned in, and I encourage people to lean in when it feels safe, when you're in a safe space. Just start testing out stuff. If you're normally reserved in the area, but on the inside, like, I was singing all the songs too. I was belting out in my head. I just was tapping in the car while she was doing it. But I decided, you know what, let me just lean into this space. It's a safe space, so let me try to just be authentic. And I just started singing. We started going back and forth. We were looking at each other, doing all of this, and it felt so good. And it may be like seem small, but that moment I allowed myself to show up how I really wanted to show up, and not in fear. So just accumulating those small type of things before you jump out the window.
Really great.
I feel like it helps you to start to build your voice, to build your trust in yourself, and in those moments.
Really great advice.
I found that one time at work, of course, and I was there was a young lady. She came in and she dropped some food on the floor, right? And the way that our office was, it was like all glass, and we had people that were coming in internationally, right? And I was the gatekeeper, and so she went through another way, and the food was still on the floor, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute, so because I'm not getting it because I'm not picking it up.
No,
so I sent an email and I said, hey, I need you to come back and pick this up because we have people that are coming in from all over the world, and I need to make sure that this space is presentable, And she did. She went and she cleaned it up, but then she came and asked me if I was having a bad day.
And you didn't ask her, was she having a bad day when she spilled the food on the floor and did not pick it up then? Like,
I didn't, but I told her, I said, no, I'm not having a bad day. But that was, so the rest of that day, other people thought that I was having a bad day because I asked her to clean up after herself. You know?
Again,
And I'm like,
audacity, all-time high.
yeah. And I'm like, okay, so why is it okay for you to speak up, but it's not okay for me? That's not fair. You know?
so part of this is the reason that we have to speak up, right?
Mhm.
And like we're not trying to teach these other folk who we are, our plight, and all of that. But we also have to understand the same way that we've been conditioned, they've
Mhm.
been conditioned as well. So that's speaking up and pointing out their, I don't know, irregularities, crazy, whatever words you want to use. I think it winds up being really, really important because now they got to go back, hopefully, and sit in whatever that was that you said. Because the question is, why would you drop something on the floor and not pick it up? Like,
Right.
what?
You wouldn't do it at home.
And maybe they would. Like, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
but why would you do that and think it's okay and think that there's something wrong with me when
Yeah. But
it's exhausting?
when you have janitorial services, maintenance services that are African American, you know, and then the majority of the employees are not, then the expectation is, oh, somebody else is going to get it,
Hmm.
you know? And it's like, but no, like that's no. Anyway, so that was my little story.
That's just no home training.
Let's just spread out.
Yes, so let's just get to it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And my thing was the fact that, you know, here I am, I'm a black woman, you know, and you're a white woman. This is what you've done. But if I speak up and then you're asking me that am I having a bad day? Like it should not be, that shouldn't be so, you know?
Like,
Yeah.
again, it goes like it's their conditioning. I remember being at when I was still writing mortgage loans, and we our bank had acquired another bank, right? And it was all of the CRA loan officers, so the Community Reinvestment Act loan officers on this call, and they're talking about the acquisition and all of that, and so now it's black folk and white folk on this call, like it's right. And one of the black guys from out of Ohio asked a question, very valid question. He was like, but he prefaced it and said, not that he was looking for a management position, but with this acquisition and people leaving, would there be room for management positions for black folk? Right. And then the white woman who was executive VP over Southeast Michigan, said, she went on to give her explanation, but she said, people of color. And I could feel the collective sigh in the room. Now, to know me, I used to tell my supervisors, like, I just want to write loans. Don't ask me to come on and talk. I just want to do this to make sure my people get these mortgage loans. Don't ask me how I get I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that person on the call. And they were fine with it. And so most people, if we're on a call, knew that I wasn't adding and trying to participate in the call. And so she said what she said, and then someone else had another comment, question, or whatever. And then after that, I had to come off mute. Yeah, I got a question. I was like, so such and such asked, right? I said, and you said people of color, where he asked about black folks specifically. And everybody on this call knows that when you say people of color, black people are still at the bottom of that thing.
Correct.
And so the amount of text messages and instant messages I got from the black people that were on that call, right? That were like, thank you so much for saying that and speaking up. And I think that's part of that thing. When we find our voice, we can't go back and shut that off. You gotta even when I was like, Lord, I'm about to have to, and I had to, because we can't just keep, because then that opened up
That's right.
the room and the space for other people to then have other conversations. And then we were able to say, oh no, it is the white women who are, that gets the benefits and all of that. But it becomes very, very hard. But in order to get there, and I think, Jazzmin, you said it, we got to lean into our healing, right? We got to lean into it hard, knowing that those triggers show up so it can show us where we need to heal.
Yep.
Right.
And again, the healing is hard. But sometimes it's like, okay, but being where you are right now ain't that hard too. So why not just do the healing so you can get on the other side?
Yep.
I tell Black women all the time, no space is ever made better without your voice in it. And so,
No.
Jasmine, I really love the small try-ons, right? Like try it on in this space, try it on in that space, until you fully find yourself where the silence will choke you, right? Like I can't sit on this call and not acknowledge that your response is a response that still does not promote what the man was trying to add, right? Like you will get to that point where no space is ever made better without the sound. And they fear that because we are voice, the most powerful being on this planet. And they fear that, and they will continue to create spaces to dim that for you. So discovering the greatest gift that you have is the authentic you that God assigned you to be, that this world is in desperate need of. The power of the Black woman's voice is critical to our survival. And I told you this would be the fastest hour of our day. And we've only talked about the workplace,
The
right?
workplace. Listen, that's why I just chuckled.
Right? Like the authentic conversations we need to have about being authentic in relationships. Part 2, y'all, it's got to come.
It has to.
You talk about the other place we wear masks,
Yeah.
and all of the things happen is in relationships. And oftentimes those relationships are with people that look just like us, right? With our girlfriends, with our significant others. Crystal, we have to tee up a part 2 to this.
We do.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
We absolutely do.
Now,
Yeah, I chuckled at the time. I looked at the time and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
How did we get here?
Come on.
I wanted to piggyback off of what Crystal was saying, because our tagline is avoidance is expensive, healing doesn't have to be.
Come on. Say it again. Say it again.
Avoidance is expensive, healing doesn't have to be. Yeah, because when we're avoiding these type of conversations, when we're not showing up as ourselves, this is costing us. It's costing us our suffering. It's costing us opportunities. It's costing us the higher person that we are trying to become. Like those things are expensive. So I just wanted to piggyback off of that because I hear you, and I feel like these things are something that need to be discussed. Healing is necessary. Because it's gonna hit the fan, no matter if you're 20 or in your 50s or in your 60s, like it's perpetuated. It's a lifetime thing.
It's also costing us the next generation.
Right. Right.
That's right. Y'all, I'm a pastor, so I have to say it's like Jeremiah said, it's like fire shut up in your bones. You gotta get it out. Because if not, you'll just be and you won't feel relieved until you get it out.
Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed. Thank you, ladies. Powerful conversation. I'm serious. We need to have a part 2 because the conversation just got started. Being able to understand why the world, those with privilege, white folks specifically, would want us not to be authentic, that they fear who we are when we show up because of the power that we hold, right? But what happens when it's us? What happens to the ways in which we dim our lights to be in relationship with folks, right? Conversation needs to be had. The tools and the resources that our listeners, I know, want. What happens when we aren't allowed, when we don't take advantage of being authentic with our own? Part 2's got to come. Part 2 absolutely has to come. Crystal.
Nicole, what does it mean to you to own your amazing?
To own my amazing, to me, means being confident, being bold, being unapologetic, looking at people like, I don't care. This is who I am. Either you gonna take it or you gonna leave it. Doesn't matter to me, but I'm not gonna change to fit your mold or your model. I am who I am, and I am authentically me.
I love
I
it.
love that. Jazzmin, what does it mean to you to own your amazing?
To own your story, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything that you went through is a part of your DNA, it's a part of who you are. And when we lean into that, it brings forth purpose. A lot of the things that we are scared to lean into are part of something great. It's something that other people need to hear. Like you stepping up in that meeting, you said people were raising their hands in the group chat, like, thank you. Thank you. So when we show up as ourselves and own our story, we are not just helping ourselves, we're helping others who need to see that.
Michele, what does it mean for you to own your amazing?
It means that both Jazzmin and Kimberly have a different path to walk, that they understand the power and the gift of their voice, that they understand that, again, no room is ever made better when they sit in it in silence, that they are a force to be reckoned with, that God designed them to have power and agency, and that they own it. That's what it means for me. Crystal.
I think it's walking in your purpose, right? Unapologetically and without fear. Um, it's time, y'all. At the end of the day, it's time. And if not us, then who? Right? Like we are equipped to do the thing. We are amazing. It was established at birth. So owning it is stepping into it and saying, yeah, this is who I am. And somebody said not this way, but the good, the bad, the ugly, right? It's all of the thing, owning your story. And when you do that unapologetically, you'd be surprised at again the doors that open, the opportunities that come, the authentic relationships that show up. And y'all, it's such a freedom in it.
Yeah.
Like it's absolutely free.
So much
I
freedom.
think- yeah, it's so much it's so much freedom. I thank you all for this very authentic conversation. You all were very transparent. It's literally, we could still talk about this for a whole nother hour. So part two is coming. But thank you for being here. Thank you for being as dope and amazing as you are. Thank you for the work that you do in helping to heal Black women. And y'all, it's okay that we need healing. It's all right. That's why we're here. So we can continue to do it and we continue to own that space in it. Michele, thank you again for doing what you do and creating these conversations that uplift our listeners. And I think again, we've done today what we come to do, right? Inspire and motivate every Black woman to own, honor, execute her amazing individually and collectively as it was established at birth. So we can never forget that. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I am Crystal Gunn. I am a Black woman, and I definitely own all of my amazing.
We absolutely did our work. We absolutely did our work. Deborah in the chat wraps this up beautifully. Create your own space and buy your own table. We'll have to worry about creating space for others.
Right.
Love that. Crystal, always thank you for your obedience to the call that God put on your life to create spaces such as this, that we can have these kind of conversations that uplift and build and do not tear down, where we get to laugh, cry, and reminisce on what it means to own and operate inside of our amazing. You truly are an amazing woman and a gift to so many that have yet to be in a physical room with you. Your reach is long, my friend, and I'm grateful to take this ride with you. My name is Michele Harper, and I own without apology my amazing. Jazzmin.
Thank you, ladies, for having me in this space. This was amazing. I see why y'all call it Amazing Women's Space. So yes, I just appreciate just the platform. I love seeing you guys and seeing beautiful Black women come together for something great. So yes, I had to write it down, y'all. So I'm being authentic. I'm gonna read off the paper. Okay.
Yes.
So my name is Jazzmin Pitts, and I am a Black woman, and I own my phenomenal amazing.
Yes. Yes. Nikki.
All right, all right. You all, this was wonderful. I too am grateful and appreciative of this opportunity to join you all. We need more of this. This is the first platform that I've been on to have conversations such as this. So I applaud you both and all of us that are on here because Jazzmin, you are doing some phenomenal things. Michele, I know you are too. And Crystal, I know you are. So, amen. Well, I am Nicole Blackman Hunt. I am a Black woman and I own my amazing.
Yes.
Thank you all for joining us this evening. Thank you to the newcomers and to those who tune in each and every week. We love and appreciate your support. We look forward to seeing you next Sunday for another dope and amazing conversation. Have a great rest of the night and a phenomenal week. We'll see you next week.